Hey everyone, this is RJ here. This isn't one of my typical Real Talk with RJ videos. This is what I like to call lazy thoughts, or thoughts from my lazy boy, because I'm sitting in my recliner. But anyway, when I was 19 years old, I was going to school at a college in Tennessee, and it was a Wednesday evening, and I was driving my old beat-up 1991 Pontiac Grand Am back from church service on Wednesday night. I was heading back to my dorm room, and I was taking like a side road that connected to the main road to get me back to the campus. So I was going down this side road, and I had my seatbelt on. I was following all the rules of the road. I wasn't speeding. I didn't run any stop signs. Just being an obedient, safe driver. And the next thing I knew, I had two cop cars behind me, sirens blazing, "Pull the car over, pull the car over." So I took the first little side street on my right that I could find, and I pulled over and put the car in park and kept my hands on the steering wheel and rolled my window down before the police officers came up to my window, so that way my hands would always be in sight. And there were actually 3 police officers, and it was 2 patrol cars. And I felt like I was in an episode of Cops or something like that, because they had that huge, not like a regular flashlight that they kind of shine around when it's dark, whatever, but they had like that huge spotlight looking thing shining it in me, and I'm like, I can't see. And so when they walk up to the window, I said, "Good evening, officer. May I ask what I've been pulled over for?" His response was, "No, you may not. Hand over your license and registration now." So I take my hand off. Okay, I said, "Okay, I'm going to have to reach for it over here." And he doesn't have a weapon pulled on me or anything, but I see that he's got his hands close to his weapon. So I'm a little nervous. So I reach over and in my glove box, pull out my license and registration and hand it to him. I said, "Here you go, sir. Again, may I please ask what I've been pulled over for?" "No, you may not." Then 2 of the guys head back to the car, to one of the cop cars behind me, and the other one kind of stands off to the side next to my vehicle, and I'm just like, well, this is interesting. So I sit there, and about 10 minutes later, they come back, the 2 that had gone back to the car. They come back by my door of my vehicle, and they said, "We've got a problem here." I said, "Well, that's what I've been asking. I've been wondering, officers, what happened to merit me being pulled over." And they said, "Well, it turns out that this is a stolen car." Now, I was driving a beat-up 1991 Pontiac Grand Am, and this was in 2001, 2002, when this happened. Okay, so the car wasn't like brand new or anything, and it was held together by a bunch of like Jesus bumper stickers. And here I was, a Christian student going to a Christian college, just minding my business on my way home from Bible study on a Wednesday evening. And I said, "Well, that's not the case. This is my vehicle. It's registered in my name. I gave you my registration. That's me. There's my license. This is my vehicle. I don't know what else to tell you." And they're like, "Well, hold on again." So then one guy goes back. The other 2 are just standing there, and I'm like, this is my car, So then about 10 minutes later, the guy that had gone back the second time, he came back, and he pulled the other two aside, and they kind of went back a little ways, and I saw him talking, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like, I thought I was going to get arrested. And so then the three of them come back to my car, and kind of, with their heads kind of looking at the ground, like, ashamed of themselves, and I'm like, is everything okay? And the officer said, yes, ma'am. It turns out when we got your information, we ran your license plate number as a Tennessee license plate. Now, my car was purchased in Florida. I had Florida tags, Florida driver's license, and they ran my information as Tennessee, because that's where I was in college. And he's like, we ran your information as Tennessee instead of Florida. And so we ran it again as Florida, and everything lines up, so here's your information back, and have a good night. And so I just kind of looked at them, because here I am, I'm 19 years old, just been a legal adult for a year and a half, if that. I'm scared to death. I'm a female. There's these three big, burly, good old boy police officers, and I don't know what's going to happen to me, And I said, officers, thank you for admitting that what happened and that you were wrong in your, assumption here that this was a stolen vehicle. And thank you for getting the right information, but I said, I think you owe me something here. And I looked at all of them and I said, and I think you know what that is. And they all apologized to me. They said, we are very sorry that we scared you and, accused you of doing something that you didn't do. And I said, thank you for your apology. I accept it. Y'all, thank you, officers. Y'all have a good evening. They went back to their cars. I put my documents away, put the car in drive, and pulled off. And went home, or went back to my dorm room. Now let's fast forward, maybe 6 years or so. I was driving home from work one day, and I was going down a particular road here in Orlando that kind of winds. It's a real slow speed limit because it winds through this really nice residential neighborhood. And I think the speed limit's like 25, 30 miles an hour, and I was definitely going the speed limit. I had over a car length of space in between me and the car in front of me, and I was just, going along, just minding my business, minding the rules of the road, and next thing I know, a female police officer is pulling me over. So I see the lights, I hear the pull over, so I pull off to the side of the road. She comes up, license and registration. Yes, officer, may I ask what I'm being pulled over for? No, you may not. Hand me your license and registration. Okay, so I grab my license and registration, hand it to her. Here you go. Again, may I ask what I'm being pulled over for? No, you may not. Okay, so she goes back to her car, runs my information, sees that everything checks out, that it's my car, and it's me, and all of my information is legit. She comes back, hands me back my information, and says, so I said, thank you, may I again please ask what I've been pulled over for? And she said, well, you were, tailgating, you're riding too close to the car in front of you. I said, no, officer, I wasn't. There was over a car length of space between myself and the car in front of me. And she's like, well, I didn't see it that way. I said, well, no disrespect, ma'am, but you were behind me, so unless you're beside me, you can't really tell how far the distance is between myself and the car in front of me when you're behind me. I said, I promise you, I was obeying the rules of the road and there was over a car length of distance. And she's like, well, just drive safely and get out of here. Okay, thank you, officer. Put my documents away, roll up the window, and go home. Fast forward a couple years after that, I'm heading back from the work release center over in the Pine Hills area where I used to do ministry. Out there, I taught a Bible study class and a life skills class to the female inmates at the state work release center. And it was in the evening, and it was about close to 9 o'clock in the evening, and I was heading home. And I'm not speeding, I'm following the rules of the road, I'm being obedient, I got my lights on, it's in the evening, I got my seatbelt, I'm, following all the rules, and here comes a big old cop car. And one officer that time, pull over. Okay, so I pulled over. Comes around to my door, I've got my hands where he can see him, I had the window rolled down before he got there. Car in park, hands where he can see him. License, registration, please. Yes, officer, may I please ask what I'm being pulled over for? License and registration. Okay, so I hand him my license and registration. Again, officer, may I please ask what I'm being pulled over for? No, you may not. I'll be right back. Goes back, runs my information, sees that it's mine, comes back up to the front of the car. I said, officer, thank you. He hands back my documents. Thank you. May I please ask what I've been pulled over for? And he said it was because the light, you know how on your license plate in the back of your car there's a little light, the tag light that shines so it lights up the license plate? Now, I'm single. I don't live with anyone. I live by myself, so sometimes I don't know if a brake light is out. I can usually tell if a headlight's out because you can see it in front of you, like when your lights shine on the car in front of you. But I can't tell if my tag light or my brake lights are out or things like that. I had no idea. So he's like, well, your tag lights are out, and this, I'm just going to let you go with a written warning and make sure you get that fixed and drive safely. I said, yes, sir. Thank you. Put my documents back and pull on and go by my merry way. Now, those are 3 different stories. The first one being the more dramatic one. The first one, where I was in college and 19 years old, and you can see I'm white, okay? And I was pulled over by 3 big old white good old boys in Tennessee. The second one, I was pulled over by a white female cop, the one where she said I was riding too close to the car in front of me and about to give me a ticket and threatening me with a ticket and whatnot. I didn't mention that part, but she did. And then the last one, I was pulled over by a very large, tall, burly, black officer. Now, when all those things happened, I didn't make a big, huge deal out of it. You could say that I was unfairly treated, that I was perhaps even targeted for some reason, that I was spoken to harshly, that I was unjustly pulled over and without really knowing why these things were happening, I gave over pertinent information to police officers even though I had no clue what was going on in all 3 scenarios until after they researched all my information. And those are 3 instances that I don't like the fact that I was treated that way. I wish those events had not transpired, but they did. And when the black officer pulled me over about he told me after he ran my information about the tag light being out. I didn't think the guy was a racist. I didn't think he was trying to, discriminate against me or be a jerk. Did these officers overstep their power and their bounds a little bit? Yeah, I think so. But, see, I was taught growing up that no matter if you agree with what the police officer is doing or asking you to do or not, you respect authority and do what you're asked to do. So if you're asked to pull your car over, if you're asked to stop, if you're asked to get on the ground, even if you do not agree, even if there's no good reason, you do it. Because maybe they're not trained very well and you don't want them doing something crazy. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're resisting. Because by their training, when someone is resisting arrest, they can take forcible measures against you. That's something they're trained to do. You don't have to necessarily have your own weapon pointed at the cop to be a danger to them. You can just fight back a little bit, and they have rights to shoot you. Now, am I saying this to say that there aren't any bad cops at all who do things they should not do and shoot people they should not shoot out of poor training or potential racist or bigoted tendencies? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm sure there are cops out there like that. But the vast majority of our police officers are not like that. They are good men and women who give of their lives and put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. Now, there's been a lot of things going on in the news lately. This is what I'm getting to here. We had the shooting of the gentleman named Alton, where the cops shot him. I saw some clips of the video. I'm not sure where the video started. I'm not sure if it showed what happened to lead up to the point where they had him held down on the ground. But from the video, it looks really bad. And it looks like the cops were, to me, it looks like the cops were in the wrong. And they should have the book thrown at them, and they should be, treated like criminals if that is truly what was going on, and that's the way it looked. So there are certainly scenarios like that. And then there are certainly scenarios of police officers potentially, profiling or being racial profiling. I'm not denying that exists. I'm sure it does in some cases. But what about in my case? I mean, why'd those 3 cops run my plate in the first place when I was abiding by all the rules of the road, driving safely, minding my own business, not doing anything wrong? Why'd they do that? Was it racial? Well, no, I'm white, they're white, so was it sexist? Did they have an issue with female drivers? I mean, I don't know. To this day, I don't know why they did that. But I do know that I was obedient to them. I spoke respectfully to them. I kept my hands where, I could see them, because I hear all the time, sometimes black people are like, oh, my parents had to teach me to talk to cops in a certain way and, keep my hands on the wheel if I'm pulled over. I'm like, My parents taught me the same thing. it's a respect thing, and it's showing that police officer that, look, I'm not trying to pop off or make anything crazy go down here. I'm being obedient to you. It's a respect issue. It's not, to me, it's not a race. It's not necessarily a race thing in every scenario where you, as a potential person of color, just because you're pulled over, or just because a cop might be running your plate, or just because a cop might be following behind you, it's not necessarily due to race. Because I've had white cops pull me over for no good reason, female cops pull me over for no good reason, and a black man cop pulling me over for really no good reason either, and scaring the living daylights out of me for no good reason. And those are just 3 examples. I've got others, but those are the 3 ones that really stuck out in my mind. I didn't think the black cop was a racist. So, the Alton shooting, terribly tragic. And like I said, from the looks of it, it does look like the cops were absolutely 1,000% wrong. And they should be handled and have the full extent of the law put against them. But on the other hand, the shooting that took place in Dallas, completely uncalled for. And those officers were out there protecting the very citizens that are protesting against them and calling them all kinds of horrible names, pigs and dogs, and, saying awful, terrible things about them. And yet they're out there protecting them and putting their own lives on the line to protect people that are so hateful toward them. And the vast majority of those cops are not racist and are not trying to be, violent toward people of color just for no reason. Another thing I want to say is that, statistically speaking, based on the numbers, and I've done some research on this, cops kill more white and Hispanic people every year than they do black people. The majority of black deaths that are violent in the United States is black on black crime. I'm not trying to make any kind of assumption, I'm just saying these are the facts. If you know anything about the city of Chicago, you know black on black crime is huge. Black people in Chicago are killing each other on the daily. So, let's keep all this in perspective, and let's not stereotype and generalize on either side of it. Just like black people, I'm sure, don't want to be characterized as cop-hating criminals, because not all black people are. In the same way, we shouldn't characterize all police officers as racists who just want to kill black people. There may be some, but I think those instances are few and far between. And the majority of the police officers in our country are there to serve and protect and put their lives on the line for us. And I think we need to show them more respect. And on the flip side, those officers that have a tendency to be power thirsty and power hungry and abuse their power and have, bigoted tendencies, they need to be put in check. And if they've done anything wrong and have harmed someone unjustly, they need to be imprisoned for that. So let's stop generalizing on both sides. Let's wait for facts instead of just making things up. And let's realize that sometimes cops just pull people over and kind of profile more than just black people at times based on whatever scenario that they're in or whatever information that they have. So those are my thoughts on the whole issue. All of it is terribly sad. Alton's death, the police deaths in Dallas, this stuff has just got to stop on both ends. And those are the thoughts from my lazy boy tonight. Until next time, God bless you.